All right, we're about to get it in here. Welcome to the 10-minute live spark where we spark curiosity, elevate instructional leadership, and focus on small shifts that can create a big impact in schools and classrooms. Today, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Courtney Johnson to the conversation. Dr. Johnson brings a powerful lens to school leadership, rigor, and engagement, and what it really means to create learning environments where students are not just compliant, but thinking, participating, and growing, especially mathematically. And that's the heart of today's conversation. How do we move beyond getting through the lesson and create the kind of instructional culture where rigor feels purposeful, engagement feels authentic, and leadership helps teachers deeper think every single day. Courtney, thank you so much for joining me on the 10-minute live spark. How are you today?
I'm finding yourself.
Hey, I'm successful.
Beautiful. That's the number one way you want to feel every day.
That is the number one
Every
way.
day.
But before we jump, but our first, we're going to jump right into our first question. As a former principal, what did you notice about the difference between teachers having high expectations and students actually understanding those expectations, especially when you think about the work you do?
Well, in actuality, I was an assistant principal, and from the lens of that seat, teachers are not. You have to hope that a teacher has high expectations for a student a lot of times, because in most learning environments, teachers are focused on being compliant and trying to be compliant towards what the expectations of the district. The district has trained them all summer, then they have expectations of their principal, and they have to meet those expectations, and they are judged on those expectations daily through walkthroughs. So more so than teachers being compliant to high expectations, teachers are more compliant to the expectations of their leadership. And if they're not, typically their job can be threatened. And that's kind of the culture that's within schools. There's a really punitive culture within schools that teachers can't comment on. Principals can't say my school is punitive. So you have to have independent researchers that can kind of observe things like that, like myself. And I talk to teachers, and teachers do not feel like they have the opportunity to truly be creative. And that is inhibiting the expectations that are placed on students. And then when you look at the expectations that are placed on students, teachers are typically, everyone's job is focused on the test. How we're going to get students to pass this test. But the passing rate for the state test in most states is about 40%. A student can get a 40 out of 100 and pass the state test. And that's why on most state tests, they never give you a 40 or a 45 or a 60 for a grade. It's always a grade that's above 1,000, 1157, 1259, 1452. And then you have to get some type of sheet to understand, okay, what does 1452 mean? What did I get? And and the 40%, that those are the typically the passing rates for third through eighth grade all around the country. So high expectations for students, you have to kind of hope that a teacher has the character to want to create high expectations, because it's all about compliance in public education.
That's kind of depressing, that answer you gave me, but it is authentic and it is the reality that a lot of people are in, because it's really hard to develop a child and see beyond the test score if that's all that's programmed into you every single day. So I can understand why. And then what you said, 40% passing, the rate just to pass the test is just a 40%. We can't get even 20%, 30% of our students to just get 40% on the test. So it lets me know the expectation is kind of low, but we're here to spark curiosity. We're here to spark a change. So I know you deal a lot with math fluency, especially in grades third through fifth. Where do students most often guess what success looks like? And how can teachers make those expectations more visible?
The expectations are pretty much set forth by the teacher, letting them know what the learning goal is or what the goal is of that day. Students can also hopefully be intrinsically motivated by, getting hopefully intrinsically motivated to want to get, you know, certain types of scores to be able to, achieve, at a higher level. But on a daily basis, the intent of the lesson is to get students to be able to master that standard. So, in order for us to create thinkers, according to the research, we have to give students problems and situations that force them to think, that demand thinking, uh, problems that do not have automatic answers, that are automated, that force students to think. And how do you put students in a situation like that? Teachers are typically kind of almost, according to the research, in a teacher-centered classroom, teachers are teaching too much. You're talking too much. If I tell you every single thing I want to see from you, I've just sucked all the thinking out of that situation. And then that situation, instead of it being a thinking situation, it's a mimicking situation. So we have to be careful of that little small thin line between thinking and mimicking, because mimicking has been dressed up as thinking for as long as we've been doing public education. I do, you do, we do what the teacher does.
But how do we make this visible though? That's the question I'm trying to get into. How can
There-
teachers make the expectation a little more visible, especially when we talk about math in elementary? We just talk about third to fifth grade elementary.
when you're thinking about making thinking visible, we have to take the worksheets away. We have to take the worksheets away, and we have to bring in chart paper. We have to bring in blank paper. We have to bring in art. We have to bring in markers. We have to bring in crayons. These are things that I have showed teachers how to do specifically in Saginaw Public Schools, and giving students the power over the learning process again. And we do that simple ways. Students need to be working together the majority of the time. I'm talking about 80, 90, 95% of the time. I'm telling teachers, students need to have somebody right here on my left and my right to be able to hear that thinking, hear those thoughts, hear those stumps that they're running into, and instead of it being an individualistic game. And then that thinking, those conversations, we have to be able to take those conversations and those notes and put those on paper to be able to make that thinking visible. And what I try to tell teachers to do, regardless of what you're doing, when you bring in the art, when you bring in the paint, the number one thing you need to do, the only thing the state gives us in every single state around the United States, the only thing that they give are standards. So we have to ensure students can read the standard, understand every single word in the standard. Teachers are jumping into teaching, but the only thing the state is assessing us is over mastery of the standard. So when we bring the art in and bring those lessons and let students work those problems out on paper, let's take those problems off the paper and bring them on the chart paper so they can go on the wall. So it can be learned tomorrow, 2 days, 3 days,
So
2 weeks.
remember, this is 10 minutes, so we gotta sum it up. So, and what I'm hearing you say is basically we need, in order to make the expectation visible, we need to make the thinking visible. And the thinking is messy. It needs to be, they need to see their thinking, not just follow some steps on a worksheet. And they also need to make the thinking sociable by communicating with their classmates on a more frequent basis. Am I getting that
Right.
right? Okay, all
Absolutely
right.
right.
So now that you lead Johnson Learning Systems, how do you help schools move from simply practicing math facts to helping students understand their progress, their strategies, and what strong mathematical thinking looks like? I know you kind of talked a little bit about it, but any other thing we want to discuss in that area?
When I came into education, it was all about Bloom's taxonomy. That's really the only thing I remember from learning how to be a teacher, is how to align everything with Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom's taxonomy is all about a pyramid. And the most important part of a pyramid is the foundation. A student can't think high in any math class if they're not able to multiply, if they're not able to skip count. Those small things, if they're not able to do those small things, they won't be able to think at a higher level during a math class. They won't be able to get to the higher levels of, if you without the foundation, you can't stack. You can't stack anything. So I focus on the counting. Are students understanding the standard? Can they read the standard? Because you're talking about a math test is really a reading test. So we have to ensure that the reading is infused and the reading is mastered. And then after the reading is mastered, your second question, making it visible with the art. But we can't make anything visible. We can't build on anything if students aren't multiplying and dividing with fluency and subtracting, regrouping with fluency. So we have to get those things out the way, or the higher order thinking will not happen. And hence, when I have 40% pass rates from states, that covers up all of these gaps that students have, because the student can pass a state test and not know how to subtract. They can pass a state test and not know how to multiply, and they can do it when the passing rate is of 40%.
Okay, I'm calling you Mr. 40 because you're trying to let us know it's way down here, and we're struggling to get our babies just above a 40. That's kind of scary when you think about it. But at the end of the day, I'm hearing we need to practice fundamental things, and everything we do, we need to model it, and we don't need to overlook the simple things, like you said, the mathematical facts, skip counting, because we could never ever get to the deeper things without those things. And at the end of the day, if we understand some of the basic things, that's when we can really spark the deeper things. So thank you so
Absolutely
much.
right.
Our time is a little bit over. We're going to end with a song from Fearless Educator Radio. That's fearlesseducator.com. And I decided to mix this one up with a little reggae, and it's called I Got the Spark. Because what we really need in kids are more opportunities to spark their thinking, to spark their imagination, and to bring out the creativity they have in them to make math a part of their everyday language. So thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. And we'll see everyone back.
Hear me now. Them said the classroom dead, but we know the truth. Every picnic in there got fire, got proof. Teacher stand up, leader rise, we like the flame, watch reach the skies. Yeah, this one for educator, whoever walked in tired and still gave everything. This one for you. Walked in tired, carrying the weight, same old lesson, same old pace, but a question lit the room on fire. Now every hand is reaching higher, students' keen minds awake, something shifting can't fake. Started small, but now we know one little spark can start the glow. Feel it rising, no, we not have to have all the answers, we just have